Ford Motor Company, first quarter profit dropped by about a quarter to 1.3 billion. I guess when I think about how, inventory is normalizing and discounts are coming up, that seems like a pretty reasonably good result.
They describe it as solid, and I don't think that's too far off of what most people would say. The net income was down, but revenue grew. They have a lot of cash on hand, and they upped their free cash flow target. So they see things pretty strong for the rest of this year and leading into 2024. And that's largely on the strength of a lot of their gas powered vehicles and on their commercial unit, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a bit.
Yeah, it was interesting. The stock is down a little, but not as much as the market overall. So maybe that's actually a bit of a win on Wall Street. We certainly saw GM get a nice bump from their quarter. But I guess the thing that really jumped out the most for me in your story about Ford's first quarter was CEO Jim Farley's comment that the automaker avoided about 12 recalls by holding back about 60,000 F-150s for 3 to 6 weeks for additional quality checks. A dozen recall-worthy defects? Sounds like, that's good to avoid, but not a very good sign. What else did Farley have to say about Ford's quality problems?
Well, they're still there. And I think that's a major issue because this is something the company's been talking about wanting to fix for years. And they've led the industry in recalls for 3 straight years. And it's already trending that way in 2024. And this is a big product year for them. They have a number of refreshes and redesigns coming out in the second half of the year. And F 150 was sort of that first test, right? It's the crown jewel of the company. And they kind of botched it again. And this wasn't even a redesign. This was a mid-cycle refresh. So not a whole lot of changes. And they had to hold back 60,000 trucks and avoid 12 recalls. That's very eye-popping. I was kind of shocked at that number. I think Wall Street has sort of given them a pass or brushed it off because Farley said that, while obviously it's not good and it impacted their first quarter results, they have new processes in place with their vehicle launches that was able to catch these 12 potential recalls, and that moving forward, it's going to save them a lot of money because holding them back is going to be better than just putting out a defective product. But at the end of the day, you still have to wonder if it's really learned anything. If there's going to be delays with the refreshed Explorer and Aviator later this year, or the Navigator and Expedition that are expected to be redesigned later this year. I think there's still a lot of questions about not only Ford's quality, but its manufacturing processes.
Yeah, undoubtedly, it would have been worse to put out a refreshed F-150 and have to recall it a dozen times. It would really hurt their credibility. But it doesn't sound good to even have that be a possibility. So yeah, not a long way to go and a lot to prove before these other crucial launches, as you said. So that's the bad news, or that's a big piece of, I guess, to us it looks like bad news. I guess the surprisingly good news, and it's not a first time, but Ford Pro, the commercial division, is doing great, and it seems like it's one of the few slices of the auto industry that's really figuring out a profitable and value enhancing way to do subscriptions, to offer subscription services, not a subscription where, hey, you can drive an F-150 3 days and then switch to a F-250 for some other job, but the way they use it for the telematics and other information and analysis.
Ford Pro is really Ford's secret weapon that isn't so secret anymore. We're talking first quarter margins of 17%, right? Revenues up 36%. And you have very profitable vehicles like the Super Duty that these fleet customers are buying. But to your point, there's a real value in the subscriptions they're offering, whether it's telematics data for fleets, telling owners how to save gas mileage here, how to, fix vehicles that may need maintenance, preventative maintenance there. Security features. Ford's advertised some security features to keep stuff in trucks safe. And I think it's a real no-brainer for a lot of these business owners to purchase these subscriptions. Whereas with retail customers, it may be more of a challenge to get them to buy in. You know, that you worry about nickel and diming them. They may get a
Mhm.
little irritated if a dealer tries, right? But again, with the fleet customers, it's a pretty easy sell.
Yeah, with the fleet customers, there's a return on investment, and like you said, it's a no brainer. I don't know that there's the same kind of use case uh, for a consumer. Maybe some stuff around EV, charging could be beneficial, but it seems like a real stretch. But hat tip to Ford Pro for doing it and doing, really, I think not only running such a profitable business, but making their customers happier, which is always a good thing to do. They're spending more and they're happy about it. So that's pretty cool. The other, rain cloud, of course, is the EV business. Model E had lost $1.3 billion. That's the same number as the net loss, but this isn't a net. This is the units are described on a pre-tax basis. I heard some reports in other media that kind of made it sound like they were the same. By on the pre-tax, Ford earned 2.8 billion. So Model E kind of cut the profits by about a third for the quarter. What's the thinking on Model E at Ford right now? How are they looking at the EV business?
Well, the thinking is they kind of need to take their lumps right now because they can't. They're taking cost out of the vehicles. Ford said they've taken 5 grand out of the cost of the Mustang Mach E since it launched a few years back, but they still can't turn a profit. The pricing environment with EVs is really tough, but they need
Hmm.
to continue to invest and continue to sell these EVs because at the end of the day, it does help them offset their gasoline sales when it comes to regulations and emissions
Yep.
requirements and things of that nature. So they're going to need to take these losses here for the next few years. They say they're not going to be profitable until they come out with that next generation of product, whether it's these smaller. Lower cost vehicles they're talking about, or some three-row crossovers that they've delayed a few years, or the next generation EV pickup. So it's going to be a tough walk until then. But for now, you are seeing when they do lower costs. We talked about this with the Mustang Mach E. They did see a sales boost from that.
Hmm.
So what they're seeing is customers are willing to buy. They just want to buy at the right price.
I mean, 1.3 billion, so that maths out to like 4.25 billion for the year. That would be better than the forecast, right? Didn't they project 5 to 5.5, something like that? It seems, or are there going to be other costs later in the year and they're not adjusting the forecast they're not improving their outlook on Model E for the year,
They're not. They still
lessening the
expect to
loss
lose.
outlook?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they still expect to lose between 5 and 5.5 billion. So, they expect pricing to continue to go down a bit here. So, not a great outlook. Again, this is more of a couple years down the road, it'll get better. We just have to take our lumps now.
Yeah. Yep. So, of course, Ford is always measured against GM. They're the two big Detroit companies, UAW workforces, very North American focused businesses. GM reported a net profit of 3 billion. Is GM doing twice as well as Ford?
Well, I think the real message here is the contrast in how they feel the rest of the year is going to go. Right, Ford
Mm.
maintained its guidance, GM boosted it, and they now expect to make, I think, about 2.5 billion at the high end more than what Ford expects to make. And you're seeing there's some similarities with the companies, right? And really with a lot of manufacturers right now, it is larger
Hmm.
SUVs and trucks, the gasoline and hybrid variants that are leading the way, allowing for these profits for them to invest in in the other parts of the business. And I think that's the case, obviously, with GM here. But Ford, again, I think it comes down to its issues with quality and manufacturing, and the concerns maybe that it does have a lot of launches through the rest of the year that could impact things.
Yeah. Yeah. If Ford didn't have to hold back those 60,000 F-150s, the gap wouldn't have been nearly so large. But they did have to, and like you said, it raises some questions going forward. But we'll see if the new processes work, and we know you'll be staying on top of the story. Michael Martinez covers Ford and the UAW for us here at Automotive News. Mike, thanks again for joining me.
Thanks, Jamie.